mental spiral. Oh my God. That's a waste of tears. I don't want that.
This was freaking wild.
Hey y'all, it's Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today. And for this video, we are going to be revisiting some of my 5-star authors. Alright, so before we get into anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments what is a 5-star author that you want to revisit. So I did one of these a while back, and it actually ended up going very well for me, where I basically just read other books from authors I've previously given 5 stars. This time around, 2 of those authors I've only read 1 book from, and then I do actually have a repeat author from the last time I did this video. I'll put a link to that in the cards up above, by the way. Starting at the top, the first author I wanted to revisit is VE Schwab. I have so much of this author on my TBR, and I gotta say, I was so interested in reading more of their stuff, given the fact that it feels like they have such a wide variety in their backlog. So the first book I read from this author and loved was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I know this is a very divisive book. I get it. But the writing just did something for me. The character work just was so up my alley. The atmosphere work was so all-consuming. Even though I know this is pretty different from so much of their other stuff, I have been meaning for forever to try something else out because I think I will love it just as much as I love this one. I finally want to read Vicious. This is a booktube darling. It has been around for forever. So many people love it. It's got 5 stars left, right, and center. So yes, it was a travesty that I had still yet to read this, but we finally did it. Vicious follows Eli and Victor, these 2 best friends in college who have very opposite personalities, but end up working together on a project to try and figure out this rumored thing that happens whenever someone has a near life-ending experience. Apparently, they get superpowers. But then there's an alternate perspective where we are following Victor about, I think, 15 years later, and he has just been released from prison and is determined to find Eli. As I said, this one has been hyped up so much. I've already loved this author. I was really, really excited going into this book. And I would honestly say I was probably just as excited for Play Nice by Rachel Harrison. First off, Rachel Harrison has become one of my favorite authors. I've had numerous 5 stars from her at this point. She does cozy horror with following a woman whose mother has recently passed. She, along with all of her siblings, had no relationship to their mom after numerous really terrifying incidents when they moved into this new house, but their mom always used the excuse that the house was haunted. And now that she is gone, the girls have inherited the house. But while the oldest 2 want nothing to do with it, the youngest decides to take this on. She's gonna renovate it, she's gonna flip it, but once she starts staying there, things start to get a little weird. The setup alone definitely reminded me of Home Before Dark by Riley Sager, which I really enjoyed, or like the TV version of The Haunting of Hill House, which I also thought was very well done. But again, it's Rachel Harrison, an author I know and love. I really enjoy the character work she does in her stories. I enjoy the way she weaves themes into them with these unsettling and creepy plot lines. So I was pretty certain this one would go well for me. And then lastly is one that I actually was not initially planning to use for this video, but it kind of ended up working out perfectly. One of my best books of last year was actually Guillotine by Delilah S. Dawson. Such a wild ride. This book gets pitched as a combo of Ready or Not meets The Menu, and I love both of those films, so I knew I needed to read this. Josh and I actually listened to it on audio and loved it, meaning we both wanted to see more from Dawson. So we ended up starting into Bloom, which is the one that I feel like most people talk about from this author. I have been recommended this so many times. Now having read it, I can tell you I get why. I totally understand. So in this one, we were following Ro, who has recently moved to this new city, and she's not really making any friends, but has started going to this farmer's market and ends up seeing one of the most beautiful women she has ever come across, Ash, and develops a little bit of a romance with this woman who sells all of these artisanal soaps and cupcakes and honey and has this great viewpoint of like zero waste and sustainable living. And she's just so beautiful, but like something's just maybe not quite right. As I said, last time I did this video, even if they weren't all 5 stars, it still went rather well for me. I don't think we had anything under 4. So I was really hoping this was going to be the same situation. Hey y'all, so take two of filming. I initially filmed an update this morning, but something wonky happened with my microphone. I think I turned on a setting I don't want on. All of the clips I filmed this morning, audio was completely janky. I am now at about 70% in Two Bishops by VE Schwab. Okay, let me first start out by saying I am liking this. In fact, I think once I hit about the halfway point and we had the reveal of an additional perspective, I actually started to enjoy this a little bit more whenever we started to see things from Eli's side. Initially, I thought it was going to be this very, can we trust what Victor is seeing, how Victor is experiencing everything? Like, is he actually being truthful with us, or is this how he is imagining everything playing out in his head? And I liked that, but I think having actual answers is a little bit more enjoyable. Where this book is falling down for me, and I had this like total just mental spiral around it last night because, you know, it's superpower related and that's so up my alley. But unfortunately, I feel like, especially with everything going on in the world right now, I don't want grim, dark, scary, realistic, gritty superhero stories. I don't want that, especially because I feel like those sorts of stories have kind of really saturated the market a lot lately. Not if you look at like Marvel. I think Marvel has never really gone quite that far. I think they've known that's not really the direction unless you get into like really specific characters, like Punisher, for example. But a lot of other stories right now that are superhero media, like The Boys or Invincible. I mean, Injustice was a really big one in the DC universe, and I think that kind of brought about like the darker bits of the DC movies as well. It feels like it's pushing too far away from what superhero stories originally were, and I don't love that. I just feel like with where we are right now in the world, all the crap we're having to deal with on a daily basis, seeing on the news, seeing in the media, I don't want this. I want the superhero fantasy, the good guy who always triumphs, is a good person, like put your faith in him because he's a good person. That's the story I want right now. Like the new Superman movie.
Where's the dog?
That sort of stuff is what I'm really being drawn towards when it comes to my superhero media. While Vicious doesn't perfectly match with either of those, it definitely leans more in the gritty, dark side. Victor and Eli are not necessarily as clear-cut as villains and heroes, and I do think that's one element of it that is interesting, is because this is not a black and white scenario. Like, it is all kinds of shades of gray. But no matter who ends up on top, I just don't think at the end of it, I'm going to be happy-go-lucky and satisfied with how the story ends. It's definitely going to lead more into the darker, scarier, realistic stuff. And I think if maybe I had read this book like 5 years ago, I would be loving it. I'd be so all over it. I am enjoying it, and I feel like I can really appreciate a lot of the elements that are being utilized here and how the story is playing out. Like, don't get me wrong, I've seen some of these plot lines in other superhero pieces of media, but I do appreciate how Schwab is using them and what they're doing with them here. So I'm liking it. It's just, again, I feel like if I read this 5 years ago, I'd be loving it. I kind of accidentally shot myself in the foot by putting this book off for so long, unfortunately. I'm really conflicted as to what's going to happen in the story. And like I said, am I going to be happy and satisfied with it at the end? Am I going to want to continue on with the series? I don't know, but it's intriguing. The writing itself is very, very well done. I mean, Schwab just like really does grab you and pull you into the story and creates a gorgeous atmosphere around it, really establishes the setting and the mindset and the tone of the story so well, and just makes it so that even when I'm having these conflicted feelings about the book, like I do want to keep reading it, which is how I have blasted through a lot of it.
Hey guys, so I've officially finished out Vicious by VE Schwab, and this is one of those where I had like a really hard time figuring out my rating on it. There's the objective part of my brain that can appreciate the story, and then there's the subjective part of my brain that it's based more on enjoyment. I really do go back and forth on how I rate books. Sometimes it is really just based on my enjoyment and vibes. Other times it comes down more to, is this a good book? Like I was saying in my prior update, I feel like if I had read this book 5 years ago, I would be all over it. I really would be loving it subjectively. but I just unfortunately didn't. Part of that does come down to my big issue of I'm just not really craving these sorts of stories in superhero settings anymore. But also I did have a very difficult time with the cast of characters here. I think Victor was interesting to follow, but I didn't really like him. I never rooted for him. And then whenever we see the alternate side with Eli, kind of the same story. I didn't really like him. I'm not rooting for him. In fact, I guess the only character I would say I did root for would be this child that unfortunately gets stuck in the middle of the situation. And it was mostly like I was rooting for her to get away from these terrible people and hopefully be able to live a normal life at some point, maybe. The characters, which are usually something that really matters to me when reading a book, weren't a driving force in the story. I was just intrigued when it came to the plot. Schwab's writing is just so good. It wraps around you, it drags you in. The vibes that they are able to weave into it. There's some really impactful lines. I mean, it was so bingeable. And even though I did have these conflicting feelings, like I read this book really fast, honestly. I just didn't put it down. I had to keep going through. Back to the objectively a good book, I think the setup of the story is really well done. Watching these two men stumble into trying to find superpowers for themselves and seeing how, is it the power that is corrupting them completely, or were they already like this? Is the power just an element that allows them to be more themselves? I think the way those discussions were done, especially in the alternating timelines and then with the alternating perspectives, was really good. It allowed us to explore both of these characters and kind of have your base assumptions that Schwab leads you towards and then starting to peel back layers to reveal more and more about the characters. I also thought the way trauma was showcased and then like the different effects of it on a person, how they continue to live their life off of a traumatic experience, how it can affect the relationships they develop with the people around them, all of that really well explored. As far as the plot itself went, I think it built up really well. Where the story went made a lot of sense. There's this great twist, like a heist story where it's revealed, oh, of course, the character actually had all this planned out and they needed this, and it turns out all this is connected to the final grand plan moment. And I really liked all of that and how it played out and how that also stuck true to this ongoing thing of, there's not really necessarily a good guy and a bad guy.
But this does not mean you're bad guy.
It's not quite so black and white here. With that, and then the fact that I didn't really like or root for either character, that by the end of it, I don't really care about what's going to happen next. I don't feel a big draw to continue on with the series. This was a good read by the end of it, but I don't think it needs to be a series. And after reading the synopsis of the next one, it has a no draw for me. I'm glad I finally got around to this one. I did like it. Again, probably would have enjoyed it more if I had read it a good few years ago. So my cop pile on this was so up and down. It ended up coming out to about 3.75 stars. I'm going to go ahead and round this up to 4 because, as I said, there's so much of this that is really well done. I understand why this book is so well loved. I get why everybody raves about it. It just was a slight letdown, and it really is such a me problem. It's not a new favorite for me from this author, though. I'm absolutely going to check out more of their work.
Hey loves, so I have surpassed actually the halfway point into Play Nice by Rachel Harrison. I think I'm around like 60-ish% in. I'm at chapter 24 and I'm really, really liking this. Starting from the top, Rachel Harrison's main characters tend to be rather non-likable, and I don't think Cleo is really any different in that regard. She's frustrating. I think she's a perfect description of like a stereotypical youngest child. There was this line where she mentions like she only cries for a performance. She only uses her tears to get something. So when she actually is sad, she is not going to let something make her cry. That's not what they're for. That's a waste of tears. And so she is kind of manipulative. She's definitely a little bratty, but she's entertaining, if nothing else, I will say. I like that she has this very self-aware feeling to her where she's not necessarily a good person. She's aware of it. She kind of just owns it. And like, who gives a she's just gonna live her life the way she wants to. Again, like it makes it so that I don't particularly like her, but it also sort of makes me like her, and especially how she interacts with people around her, namely her family members. It means I am rooting for her so much because she is the youngest, because she has this certain way about her, like her parents, her sisters just sort of like don't really have faith in her, you can feel. And I love that she's like so determined to prove them wrong. She's going to take care of this. She's going to get this situated. If you don't think she can, screw you. I'm just enamored with her and I'm really enjoying following her story. As far as the house element goes, I do appreciate a good haunted house. And I really like what's happening here because it's still Rachel Harrison. Like, it's not over the top. It's not gory. It's not downright terrifying. But like, there are moments every once in a while where it's just creepy and unsettling and weird. I don't know why I continue holding this up when I don't even have the cover on. As far as like haunted house stories go, I don't feel like there's been anything especially over the top that's happened yet, but there's just lots of little moments that are weird and not quite explainable and strange. And it's just like slowly pushing me to the edge of my seat. And I really, really like it. It again fits very well with Harrison's writings of this like cozy lifestyle story, but it has this haunted house element to it. There's so much going on with the memories and feelings she has towards her mom. And I love the complicated relationship we are watching get explored here because Cleo was the youngest of the kids. Like, she really doesn't have as many solidified memories with her mom. And even the ones she does have, she admits like so many of them are tarnished by something. So many of them are her mom being wasted or violent. But now that she is alone in the house, starting to experience some of these things that her mom experienced, it's really bringing up all these questions. But then at the same time, she finally caves and reads the book her mom wrote about the house. And it's also making her reevaluate so many stories of her life and like the narrative that has driven so much of her life and her family members and like the way they have moved on from this. I'm really, really liking that. Appreciate that it's very gray. Like, it is not black and white. It is not been so clear cut as to say like the mom was the bad guy or, oh, in reality the dad was the bad guy. It's this very ambiguous gray area, and like we're having to figure out what actually happened. And we're seeing that some of Cleo's memories may actually be true, but through the mom's eyes there's an added level of nuance to her. There's an explanation for what happened here and why she acted this way, and just across the board, really, really liking it. I think it's so good. There's also a relationship at the very least that Cleo is getting involved with a guy, and I like how that's being played in as well, and how he's being used because he's so unlike other people in her life. The way they play off each other is really interesting, and I think he like highlights some of her better qualities, but at the same time like she in her relationship with him amps up some of her unlikable qualities. It makes it so that just reading the relationship and their interactions is really interesting. I'm really liking it. It's got occasional moments that make me laugh out loud. Just the tiny moments that are scary aren't like jump out of your skin scary, but again, it's just this like crawling nearer, making me more unsettled as we go on, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Hello, my loves. So I have officially finished out Play Nice by Rachel Harrison, and I enjoyed this so much. I gotta say, I have some like complicated spoiler feelings when it comes to the end of the book, so I won't get into those here. But if you are curious, I did have a spoiler reading vlog of this on my Patreon, so I'll put a link to that in the description down below. First finished it, I wasn't quite sure if I enjoyed how she rounded everything out, but given the fact that so much of this book is really focused on characters themselves, the relationships between them, and the dynamics that shift throughout this experience, I think it does make sense for the entire setup of the book. It is definitely slower, more meandering when it comes to the horror parts, but this book would not have been what it was if we didn't have such an interesting character in Cleo, if we didn't have such an interesting relationship to follow with her sisters, and then also this very complicated dynamic with the memory of her mother. All of that was really just singing for me here. I loved it. There was one scene where they have like a family therapy moment, and oh my God, I loved every second of it. I was just glued to the page. I wanted a full transcript of that entire meeting. I was loving it. As far as the actual resolution goes, because I did go into this having a hard time separating it from some other books I've read with a similar setup, I do think it closes out in a way that's true to the setup of the story. It differentiates itself enough. It also kind of works with just the cozy horror element of Rachel Harrison's stuff because it doesn't fall into the trap of being like a slasher or a simple monster encounter sort of thing. It's more complicated. There's more layers to it. And again, I just really liked that about it. That's something in general I tend to really enjoy with Harrison's work and doing this cozy horror subgenre because it has these horrific moments. It has these scarier things that really make us, analyze the characters in the story and the themes that are being woven into it. But at the same time, it's not so tied up in the horror itself. There's other things going on in the book. I also did enjoy the little romantic element that is included as well. I think this one actually got a little bit more explicit than some of the other books she's written that had romances in them. So I guess be aware of that if you're not really a romance reader. Obviously, I didn't really mind that. But so like I said, I did kind of have this back and forth when it came to deciding on a rating for this. Initially, I really thought I was going to do a 4-star. Like I actually put that down in my Notion tracker. And then afterwards, I ended up filming my update for that spoiler vlog and came to the realization that like, no, when I think back on my reading experience with this book, it's all positive. It is 100% a good time. And I really can't think of anything I could complain about. So no, I changed it. This is a 5-star. Harrison does it again. Honestly, this is the second time I have utilized her in one of these videos. And both times she has actually hit the mark. And I'm so glad for that.
Hey y'all, so I have officially hit the halfway point into Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson, which honestly, this was not a book I had on a possible TBR for this video, but ended up starting into it with Josh whenever we were driving to go hiking. That's kind of like our prime time to listen to audiobooks is because it's always going to be a bit of a drive. So we ended up starting into this and I am loving it. We're both loving it actually. I heard so many things about this one and it did intrigue me, but like I felt as though the synopsis people were giving, it was just so basic. She meets this woman at an open air market and starts to develop a relationship with her and like things progress from there. And that's it. If this was a romance book, okay, that alone makes sense, but it's not a romance book. It's a horror book. My first book from this author was 𝗖cie, and I'm definitely being reminded of how well Dawson can create a picture. The vivid imagery in this is great. It's very cottagecore-y and I really like it, especially because it has this very superficial like softness and prettiness, but there's just something not quite right. The further in we get, the more I'm starting to see, what's really going on? At this point, like I said, we're halfway in. I think the author's doing a really great job in like always tying things back to this nature writing. That's great. But I'm really liking our main character, Ro. And the more we're learning about Ash, the more intrigued I'm getting. It's one of those where it's like, I want Ash to be normal because I want Ro to be able to find a relationship with this woman and, find a little bit of happiness. But I really like how Dawson is unveiling things where it's always just something a little bit weird. Total possibility it's normal. There's just enough there for you to find like some normal excuse for whatever it is. Occam's razor, where if you look at it, you can process it and think, okay, this is a normal explanation. But there's the off chance it's something not so normal. And given that this is a horror book, I'm inclined to believe it's going to be not so normal. I'm really liking it. It's really good. It did actually start out more romancy, and like I said, with this beautiful nature writing, it's really pretty, but it's like there's this slow crawling dread. This is something not quite right that is starting to creep up in the background, and I'm really liking it. I'm really liking it. It's going so good. I do remember this author had some phenomenal gore in 𝗖cie. There were some scenes in that are definitely gonna stick around in my head, and I'm curious if she might have that happen here as well. But I am really enjoying it. I don't know how long it'll take us to finish it because we don't currently have another hike lined up, but I can't wait. I can't wait to keep reading.
Hello, my loves. So I've officially finished out Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. And listen, it might have taken us a little bit of time to read this just because Josh and I kept forgetting that we were in the middle of an audiobook, but this was freaking wild. This was really good. Both of us agreed we need to continue checking out whatever this author comes out with because like her short horror stuff is so good. Continued to absolutely love the aesthetic of the story. I think it is fantastically done and is presented in this really great juxtaposing way. The reveals that happened toward the end, wild. Both of us were like, is it gonna go this way? Is it gonna go this way? And we were both kind of right, but also kind of wrong. And like, it definitely took a twist that we weren't really expecting there at the end. Oh my God, that was disturbing, but I really, really liked it. It was one of those books where I finished it and I was like, that's horrifying. I want to read it again. I do think things were a little slow there in the middle. I'll admit, like, I do think maybe things dragged a little bit too long. Even still, invested. I was so intrigued as to where was this freaking going? Like, how were the characters going to explain things? How are they going to react to this? How are we going to round things out? I'm trying to be so unspoilery as possible. I think suspense was very well built in this, and as I said, I do think there's like some elements where you can kind of figure out what's happening pretty easily, but there's other parts where it's like, oh, I didn't know we were gonna make that jump. Gross. It was also so interesting how Dawson did the romance here, and Josh and I were talking about this where it feels like you get so taken away with Ro at the start of the book, where you really want this perfect happily ever after for her, but then you remember, like, it's a horror book. It's not going to be that cut and dry. And then as things continue forward, there's all of these weird, unusual, unsettling things that like Ro is shrugging off, or is like, okay, well, I assume it's this because that's a normal explanation for that, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right explanation for it, which definitely added to the suspense very well. But I also think it's kind of clever how this is done in a way of like showcasing that anybody can be a toxic POS. Like, it did not matter that Ro was starting to develop a relationship with a queer woman. That does not mean the relationship should go forward and she can just ignore red flags popping up. But at the same time, because she's kind of a baby gay and this is like her first queer experience, it's like she is so new to this. She doesn't think to look at things through the same lens because she's so used to having relationships with men that she has this like preconceived notion of a woman and just does not see them committing these red flag actions. Again, really, really liked this one. I do think, like I said, it dragged a little bit there in the middle. So like I would put this at 4.5 stars, but still really enjoyed it and definitely need to check out more of this author. All right, y'all, so that's officially it for today. So in the end, I would say, once again, these 5-star author videos do so well for me. I really need to prioritize these videos more because it kind of gives me an excuse to pick up more from the authors I love. And 9 times out of 10 so far, I feel like we are doing pretty freaking well when it comes to the ratings afterwards. All right, and on that note, that's officially it for today, y'all. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, let's leave a cupcake emoji for Bloom down in the comments. I have links to all of my socials as well as a few ways you can support me down in the description. I come out videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!